good afternoon, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here today with everyone. We're really excited about this session, and we're hoping that this is going to be conversational, so please get your questions ready. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to introduce each other, share a little bit about what we do. I'll share a little bit about some of the work that we're doing as it relates to advocacy for immigrants' rights. But please, really, the best way to do this, especially being the last session, is to hear from you all and see what questions you all have for us. So I'll start off by introducing myself. I'm Iliana Perez, as was mentioned, Executive Director of Immigrants Rising. For those of you not familiar with our organization, we've been around for over 18 years. We started off as an organization that fundraised to support undocumented students in the Bay Area. And over the years, the organization has evolved to offer a wide variety of services, programming for the undocumented community. We cover a lot of work in higher education. So we've done a lot of work in California as well as other states to ensure that there's equitable access to college. So we've done a lot of work around in-state tuition policies, around state financial aid for undocumented students, and a lot of systemic work to be able to work with colleges and universities for them to be better equipped to work with undocumented students. We also do a lot of work around providing paid career training opportunities for undocumented individuals, regardless of having work authorization. I personally have been leading a lot of entrepreneurship work, and this is because I myself was undocumented. I was undocumented for 27 years, navigated the educational system all the way up to the first year of my PhD program, fully undocumented without DACA. And one of the questions I had when I first joined the organization was, what do undocumented college students do after they graduate without work authorization or a social security number, which is where I was at back in 2009 when I graduated from college. So that led to a lot of the work around entrepreneurship as an alternative to employment. I'm happy to elaborate a little bit more about that a little bit later. But that was ultimately a lot of my work at Immigrants Rising was to create those resources to inform the community, create programming, and also just being able to work with the state of California. And I'll share a little bit once I get into the details of how we engage with advocacy efforts around budget policy, around specific bills that we have also introduced related to economic mobility. In addition to that work, we also offer a lot of mental health services, knowing how important it is for the undocumented community to have access to culturally sensitive mental health therapists. So we offer a lot of support and training for mental health professionals to learn to work with undocumented individuals. Here in California, we also connect undocumented young people with licensed therapists, and we also help train undocumented individuals to become licensed therapists. So a lot of work in that mental health pace. And most recently, we've established an official kind of advocacy and policy branch that I will talk about in just a little bit. But that's a bit of an intro to get us started, and I will pass it over to Cody.
Test. Amazing to hear about all that wonderful work. Cody Wofsy, my pronouns are he, him. I am Deputy Director at the ACLU's Immigrants' Rights Project. ACLU, as many may know, is an organization that works on a wide range of constitutional and civil rights issues. We are the project that focuses on the constitutional and civil rights of non-citizens around the country. We're at the national office. There are also ACLU affiliates in every state that we work closely with. And we are litigators. I'm a litigator, which means I do lawsuits in every level of the state and federal courts. Many of our cases are either in or on their way to the US Supreme Court. That means that I spend my days writing briefs, thinking about legal arguments, standing up in court, working with partners to try to address the many legal challenges facing immigrant communities, particularly in this troubling moment. I've worked on a number of things since I started at the ACLU 10 years ago. I'll just list out a few in case folks are interested in any of them in particular. Worked on cross-border shootings, the Muslim bans, asylum issues, access to courts and judicial review of immigration issues, enforcement by federal agents in abusive ways, expedited removal and other immigration processes, and most recently, as Juan mentioned, birthright citizenship. We are litigating, along with LULAC and other partners, 2 cases challenging the Trump administration's birthright citizenship executive order, and had oral argument in the First Circuit Court of Appeals just this last Friday in the case we're doing with LULAC. It's really wonderful to be here with you all, and I look forward to the conversation and hearing what questions you may have.
Great, and I guess now we'll dive a little bit deeper, and I know this session is intended to sort of give you all an insight to how advocacy and the courts play a role in the work that we do. So I'll start off by sharing a little bit about how we got involved in advocacy. So as I mentioned before, we were very focused in providing direct support, meaning scholarships, information and resources for the undocumented community. But as we began working with the undocumented community, it became very evident that there's systems level change that needs to happen to be able to really get the kind of support that we need. So a lot of work started off in access to higher education. Here in California, we've had AB 540, which is the bill that allows undocumented students to have in-state tuition, which we know, by the way, is under attack across many other states across the U.S. California became the second state to be able to pass that about 20 years ago. And as we began working with students, with college professionals, we kept seeing just a lot of gaps that existed, whether it was a student not having enough units, whether it was student having just other issues that would prevent them to be eligible to access in-state tuition. So that led to a lot of bills that have been introduced over the past few years that are intended to slowly close a lot of those gaps that we have seen to be able to expand that in-state tuition for more students to be eligible. After that came AB 130, AB 131, which allows undocumented students in California to access state financial aid. And that in itself, as we began to work with undocumented students, with college counselors, we began to see that there's a lot of barriers and there's a lot of steps that need to be taken for students to be able to access that financial aid. So all of that exploration that starts off with working directly with the community then leads to policies that need to be passed and bills that need to be introduced to be able to close some of those gaps. So that's a little bit about the higher education work that we do. So what that means is that we co-sponsor bills. We do this in partnership, and coalitions are extremely important to be able to do this. Working with organizations like the ACLU are very important to be able to have the legal background of a particular policy is something that's very important. With respect to our economic mobility work, as I mentioned, we've done a lot of work around entrepreneurship, ensuring that individuals learn about these options. And one of the first ways that we got pretty involved with a lot of budget advocacy in the state of California was through a program called SEED. And this is a program that started about 5 years ago, and it's a budget allocation in the governor's budget that allows for undocumented people to have access to entrepreneurship training and entrepreneurship grants. So a coalition got together. It was actually led by the UCLA Labor Center that advocated for a $10 million budget allocation that was, I believe that was passed around 2021. And again, this was in coalition. Several organizations were part of this. We had several organizations that represented a lot of worker cooperatives. So we were successful in getting that initial $10 million budget allocation, with 75% of that budget going out to the community in the form of grants. Immigrants Rising received 5.4 million of those grants, and in total, we've been able to serve over 1,000 individuals with getting money directly to the community. So that's one example of also how we can engage with the budget and with elected officials to be able to continue programs like this. The program continued in a second iteration with a $20 million budget allocation. This year, we also advocated in partnership with the California Immigrant Policy Center as part of our Economic Mobility for All campaign, and we were able to secure $7.5 million. We had a much bigger ask, but we know that it's a challenging year for the state of California. California, but we wanted continuation in that program, so we did get that. Other examples of policies we've been involved with, we were successful in passing AB 2543 last year, which allows undocumented people to be able to certify their businesses in the state of California. This year, we're introducing another bill, AB 667, that would allow the expansion of professional licensing. So we've had in the state of California, SB 1159, which allows undocumented people to apply for professional licensing. But again, working with the community, we realized that there were a lot of barriers. This particular bill closes the barrier of the examinations not being available in any other language than English. So y'all can imagine, we met individuals in the construction industry, we met individuals in the plumbing industry, in landscaping, who need to be able to get a license. They can get it with an I-10, but all the examinations are in English. So this bill that we introduced would allow any individual who needs to access the examinations in different languages to have an interpreter. So that's a bill that we're currently moving. It is already kind of moved along, and we're hoping that this is something that will be able to be passed. One more example that I can share to kind of see the intersection of the community work, the advocacy work, is called the Opportunity for All campaign. This is a super exciting campaign. This is premised on the legal theory that IRCA, the Immigration Reform and Control Act, actually does not, it doesn't apply to state entities. IRCA is the federal law that prevents undocumented individuals from working without work authorization. And so there was a legal theory that was introduced that suggests that state entities do not actually have to do this. So a couple of things have passed related to the Opportunity for All campaign, which, by the way, is student-led, which is super exciting that students are the ones that have been advocating, pushing for this, primarily students at the UC system. A bill was introduced last year that would have created a law for this to be able to move forward. Unfortunately, the bill was vetoed by the governor because the governor said this is actually, because it's a legal theory, it actually needs to be reviewed by the courts. So what happened? There was a lawsuit, which I'm actually a plaintiff of. So there is a lawsuit that was introduced by attorneys from UCLA as well as from other institutions. The bill was actually just heard, and 2-3 days ago, we got a court decision that actually sided with us, citing that the UC system, yes, definitely, big win. And these are like breaking news. Literally, we were we're still taking media calls like yesterday, today. The court sided with us, stating that the UC is in fact engaging in discriminatory practices based on immigration status. So this just happened. In conjunction with this, there's a second iteration of the bill, the Opportunity for All Bill, AB 713. It's a 2-year bill. It's going to be reheard in January, but the strategy is that we needed the courts to first be able to decide on the case itself, on the legal theory. Now we're going to circle back to the bill, and we'll see if we can push this forward as a law. The UC system can also, now that there's a court decision, what the court says, they do need to change their policies, but in theory, they could start hiring undocumented students. That's yet to be determined whether or not they will do that. Regardless, we're going to keep pushing forward with the bill next year. So a couple of examples for you all to see how the courts are so important, how community organizations, student-led advocacy is all really important in getting some of the changes that we need. So I'll stop here and let Cody also talk a little bit about his work, and get ready for any questions as well.
It's very exciting when I saw the news myself and was thrilled to get to hear about it in person. So congratulations. So like I mentioned, I'm a litigator. This session is actually about advocacy, and so I wouldn't be surprised if there's many people in this room who know more about advocacy than I do. But I was, thinking about, what maybe lessons might be transferable from my work in the courts to thinking about how to advocate for policies or with your school or with your communities and so forth. So I had a few thoughts, and again, I would love to hear what's on your mind. So the first is something that's already been brought up, which is just working in coalition. I can't agree more that it's so, so important. Every bit of the work we do is in coalition with our partners who work on communications and advocacy, with our affiliates, with other organizations. And that's both just to nuts and bolts get the work done, but it's also for all sorts of other important aspects. I think the birthright citizenship litigation that we're doing with LULAC is a good example of this. It's a wide range of organizations, both as co-counsel and as clients, and everybody's bringing their own perspectives. And one aspect of that is that there's a whole history to the birthright citizenship litigation. It's about the 14th Amendment, which was enacted after the Civil War in response to the Dred Scott decision, which denied the citizenship of Black Americans. We're partnering, among others, with NAACP LDF, which is the oldest civil rights organization advocating on behalf of Black Americans, and they very much are bringing that perspective and that deep knowledge about the history to bear on our litigation and to our team. Likewise, the primary case on this from the US Supreme Court is a case called Wong Kim Ark, which was a challenge by a Chinese American man that was brought asserting his citizenship at a time of incredible anti-Chinese discrimination and racist legislation. And one of our other partners, Asian Law Caucus, both is sort of able to deeply connect with Asian American communities today, but also has that knowledge and connection with the history. And I just think that having those kinds of perspectives and partnerships can only strengthen our work, and candidly, we are up against incredibly powerful forces, and we all need to work together to try and achieve more justice. So that's point one. Point two is that it's important in litigation always to be thinking about who's your audience that you're trying to persuade. Typically, that's going to be judges. And typically, the judges that we're talking to may not share my perspective on things. They, are almost always going to be more conservative, oftentimes older, almost always, whiter than the communities that we are advocating on behalf of. But I can't get up there and argue a case the way that I would think about it, because I'm not the one holding the levers of power. That judge is. And so I need to think about getting inside that person's head, understanding how they might be thinking about things, what they might be worried about, and how best to try and persuade them. Now that's, particularly true in litigation, but I think it's true in every kind of advocacy that we might be doing, whether it's with a school board, whether it's having a conversation with somebody you disagree with, whether it's talking to your family. And so I really think it is a skill set that all of us need to sort of engender, is trying to understand the perspective of the person that you're trying to persuade and what is going to reach them. I think that the corollary to that is that we have to be really careful about sort of falling into trying to be the race to be the most pure in your beliefs. That I have decided that I'm gonna, only talk to people that agree with me 100% of the time. I think that we have to figure out how to have broader conversations, to build bridges, to persuade. Otherwise, we're gonna be left, being absolutely correct, alone in the corner. And then the last point I'd say is just to have a long view. It's a scary time right now. It's a worrying time. It's a painful time in a lot of ways. And for me, the thing that helps me when things are darker is thinking about the sort of longer historical perspective. And two of the areas that I'm actively litigating right now kind of bring this into sharp relief for me. So one is birthright that we've talked about already. The other is anti-immigrant state legislation. There's a whole bunch of state laws that have been passed, starting with Texas, but now with a bunch of other states, that are basically trying to set up state immigration systems. Why? Because they're not happy with the federal immigration system, especially under the last administration. They felt like it was not severe enough, even though the immigration laws are extremely severe. And so they wanted states to be in the business of even more draconian immigration enforcement. And one of the interesting things is that in both of these fights, the issues and the arguments are basically the same as they were in the 19th century. That in this 1870s and 80s and 90s, these were the same issues that were coming up. And that's because there have always been the forces in the United States who want to exclude, who want to reject newcomers as other, who want to make this a whiter country. And what we see is the same arguments, the same issues coming up over and over. In those litigations, what that means is the Supreme Court has already decided these issues and decided it against the position of the Trump administration and its allies. Now, the fact that we're fighting these fights again might be kind of a pessimistic point. Here we are again. But on the other hand, the way I like to think about it is that these forces have been here the whole time. They have been pushing back basically from the beginning. And yet, we look around and we see this incredible, vibrant country with people from everywhere, every community, every language, every religion. And essentially, they've already lost. That no matter what the Stephen Millers of the world want to try to do, they're going to inflict a lot of pain. They are going to do a lot of harm to communities and to families, but they will fail in the effort to remake what America is and what it's about. And so on that long view, for me at least, that gives me some hope. And so I hope that as you're moving out into your communities, into your spaces, and advocating, and if you run into setbacks, if you have defeats, which we all do, we have a lot of them, if you are, feeling scared, that taking some of that longer view, thinking about the bigger picture, may help to put it in perspective a bit.
Yeah, and I can add a little bit to that long view. One of the things that has been hard as a directly impacted individual myself, having been undocumented, my family is undocumented, it's been really important to think about the long view and also the different systemic changes that could happen at different levels. So at the federal level, very difficult. We work closely with partners that work at the federal level, and I think, oh my goodness, how do you all do this? Because we haven't won in a very, very long time. But I mean, there's always opportunities to be able to look at different ways to do things, and the work that we do has mostly been at the state level, at the local level, and a lot of change is possible. That's probably what has kept me in this work is the ability to be able to see pretty quick changes when it comes to a lot of the work that I mentioned around access to in-state tuition. A lot of the bills that we saw pass in the last couple of years is really a testament to the impact that can happen at all different levels of government. And I think also related to the courts, what's interesting, what's happening at this moment is both an attack on our democracy that I think many of us have been shocked when we're seeing a lot of cases go through the Supreme Court that we're wondering, like, why is that even happening? But I think what it's also doing is really establishing that solid foundation that is needed, especially from the courts, to really say, no, this is going to stay, and yes, it's going to be a fight, but in some ways it's a test, and in some ways it's an opportunity for all of us advocates to be able to really solidify what maybe we thought was safe or what we thought was already in place for us, it isn't. And we're really seeing just how fragile a lot of the work that we have done to protect basic human rights. This isn't, obviously this conversation is about immigration, but there are so many other basic human rights that are being attacked that I think is a huge opportunity for all of us to really think through what are some of the ways that we can tighten what we have with a test like that, with like the one we have in front of us. And I don't know, Cody, what your thoughts are also a bit. It's been interesting to see the politics and the courts, in that we kind of all learned in school that the courts are supposed to be separate from politics, but obviously we've seen that questioned. So I don't know, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's no secret that the courts have moved to the right in recent years. It's been difficult to win on behalf of immigrant communities in court for a long time, and there are structural reasons for that. I mean, non-citizens have no right to vote, have sort of inherently diminished political power, have major constraints on their sort of standing under the Constitution. But it's gotten much worse and much more hostile in recent years. And obviously, judges are both independent in some sense, but are political actors. They're nominated and confirmed by presidents and Congress, and they, swim in the political waters with everybody else. That said, I think that we have seen some signs of hope in this year, largely because the administration is pushing the boundaries so far. And in particular, there have been a pair of cases that we won at the U.S. Supreme Court on what's called the Alien Enemies Act, which has to do with an attempt to very quickly deport people without even giving them a hearing, which, the Supreme Court put real rule of law limits on what the Trump administration, can do. That obviously is not enough to prevent, as I said, the major harms being inflicted on our communities. But from a democracy and rule of law perspective, it is at least a baseline of are still rules and they will be enforced. And, since the first day that our colleagues ran into court and got an injunction, a court order against the Alien Enemies Act, there has not been a single Alien Enemies Act removal since then. The fight's still going on, but the system has held in that case. There's obviously others we could talk about. I would love to hear what is on your mind. So please, questions, comments. Do you wanna pick our first?
Right here in front of us. And I don't know if we have another mic or.
I'll be loud.
Great.
Wonderful. My name is Victor Flores. I'm a recent graduate of Harvard University and a resident of New York. I think it doesn't necessarily have to be reiterated just how dark of a time we're living in, specifically in reference to immigration and the conditions of our immigrant communities. And so thank you both for being here to speak with us today. I think one thing that Dr. Wofsy was highlighting is that we are seeing that the states are innovating really dark ways to further criminalize immigration in our immigrant communities. But one thing that I found that Director Perez was highlighting is that we're also seeing that in this dark time, we're equally innovating in a positive way to create new protections for immigrants that we otherwise didn't have. And that honestly wasn't something that was top of mind, but I'm really happy to hear you discuss the Opportunity for All campaign. And I was hoping that you might be able to share some other examples of what you're seeing across the country in terms of states innovating in ways of such as to protect our communities. So like, for example, as a student activist in Massachusetts, I worked on an act ensuring access to equitable representation in immigration proceedings, seeking to create a legal defense fund to provide culturally competent representation for immigrants going through proceedings, recognizing that they're civil in nature rather than criminal, and therefore our rights in terms of a due process and access to representation is not equally respected. And so I'd love to hear any other examples you might have to hopefully brighten our days and our outlook on the conditions that we're experiencing today.
I could start, or you? Yeah, thank you so much for for bringing that up, because I think it is an important dynamic. You know, states, as you say, both can be an engine for really awful sort of harm against immigrant communities, and also can be some of the best protections for immigrant communities, especially against a hostile federal administration. I think that there's a huge range of things that states have worked on and can work on even more. A lot of the action and energy over the years has had to do with the deportation pipeline. So the classic way that people find themselves in deportation proceedings and eventually deported is that they are coming to some kind of contact with the state or local criminal justice system. That might just be getting picked up on a traffic ticket or not having a driver's license, classic sort of status violations. But everybody who is arrested in the whole country has their fingerprints sent to the FBI, which then sends them to DHS. And so that is a very common way for people to be caught up in the dragnet of immigration enforcement. So what you have is places across the country having policies that are essentially opting out of that system in various ways. The most common has to do with immigration detainers, which are these requests to hold people, but there's a bunch of other things too. Beyond that, I think, to your point, facilitating greater access to legal services in removal proceedings, and then just all the many ways in which it is difficult to live life as an undocumented person. Access to identity cards, to bank accounts, to all these kinds of things. There are ways in which local governments can make life more livable for their residents. And I think those are perfect things for folks to get involved in their communities, talk to their city councils about. It may be something that is just not even on their radar. It may be something that they've been hearing about for years and they're finally ready to be tipped over into voting for, especially given the climate and the horrors that people are seeing on TV. But yeah, I'm curious what else.
Yeah, I mean, just to add a little bit to that, I think I'd like to reiterate the importance of working with your local governments. I do live here in Long Beach, so I happen to know that here in Long Beach we do have a sanctuary policy that basically says that we're not going to be collaborating with ICE, which was very important, and it was advocates who are pushing for cities like Long Beach and others around LA to be able to strengthen a lot of that, to be able to protect the residents of those states. Right now, a lot of advocates are advocating for $2.2 million for a legal defense fund here in the city of Long Beach. And so right now there are, I believe, weekly city council meetings where we are trying to fill those spaces, and it really takes community members to come in and give public comment to be able to pass all of that. And that really is another very, very great way to be able to strengthen the kind of support and assistance that is needed at this time. And every single one of you can attend your own local city council meetings to either support a policy, support something that's being introduced by grassroots organizations, or oppose something that you may be seeing that is going to negatively affect your communities. Is such a great way and such a valuable way to be involved. And I think we have more questions, and I think there is like a mic, or folks can also just stand. Yes.
Make it so big, tall. Okay. Anyways, so yeah, my question won't be so legal. I'm not like that. But I do attend my city councils sometimes. I watch their YouTubes and they're long. But sometimes some of these city councils, there's so much jargon, and it's so hard. You can read so much and attend so much, but then there's always, I don't know, it seems like there's always something on the bottom line that they just don't tell you about, or that you had to go to the website that was non-existent yesterday but was existent at that moment And, that's where the red line was. And so what do we do as just a general, regular person? And it's something that I've been going to a lot of rallies, and a lot of people are always asking, like, where do we start? So I'm like, okay, go vote. But then it's like, okay, we go vote for the policies, and then within the policies, there's things that are in there that are not in our interest, and they're written in ways, and they're publicized in ways that they're not what's actually in the policy. It was in there, buried down, and they relied on people not to read it and understand it. And so what do we do to understand it, and where do you go to get your news to understand these things is my question.
I think it's a challenge that everybody faces, and I think it's really important to recognize it. I think for me the main thing is just figuring out who those trusted sources are. If you're talking about a local election, figure out, talk to people in your community, look at the local newspapers or folks put out voting guides, figure out who kind of aligns with you and your perspective, and where you can get that kind of trusted information. If it's, if there's an issue that's coming up and you're feeling like, they're burying it in jargon, figure out who your allies are. Is there somebody who is on the city council who sounds like they kind of make sense on this issue? Set up a time to meet with them, meet with their staffers, explain your concerns, ask your questions. And a lot of the times there will be somebody who can help you through the kind of mess and get down to like what's really going to matter. What are the phone calls that you can make to whose office that might actually move things? It is possible, but I know it is challenging. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, that's such a great question, and I do understand that it's challenging. And I think following organizations like Immigrants Rising, like the ACLU, I mean, a lot of the work we do is to try to translate kind of legal language into a post that's easy to share, that's easy to circulate. And I mean, now that we all live in social media, it is pretty easy to kind of circulate information around, to demystify something, to be able to just share, concrete information. And that's a lot of organizations that exist that do that. And also, same thing, just emailing your elected officials. They have to reply to you, so they can't just ignore you. So email them, call them, schedule meetings with them. Their job is to serve you, to serve the community. So I know I've been shocked where I email and I'm like, wow, they did respond. So, but you gotta just kind of bother them, and it shouldn't be bothering. It's your right to be able to raise your concerns with any one of your local elected officials. Same thing with your local congressperson. It goes all the way up the chain, and that is what we should all be doing to be able to enact the kind of changes we wish to see.
I think we're almost out of time. Why don't we take one more question, and then I'm happy to talk to folks afterwards. I'm sorry, those who we ran out of time. Please go ahead.
And for all the work you do. My name is Juan Rayo. I'm a rising junior at Trinity College in Connecticut. The environment today it's very depressive, seeing how even the Supreme Court sides with the Trump administration and just keeps allowing them to just roll down on everything that is good and positive about the world, basically. I am curious about what advocacy could look like in a worst case scenario. What comes to my mind, honestly, not only as a nightmare, but also as something that I am seeing with the court regularly siding with Trump is, what if, for example, the Trump said that it was okay for him, the court said that it was okay for him to run for a third term, right? Like if they reinterpreted the 22nd Amendment and they allow that thing to happen as they have been doing, just allowing them to do anything they want. How should advocacy evolve, as these times just keep becoming more and more challenging?
I mean, it's a great question. I totally agree. It is a scary time, and it's a time when I think we all are feeling like the things that used to feel solid are now suddenly up for question, and who knows. I guess I'd say a couple things. One is, like I said, so far, as of now, the courts are holding, the system is holding. We're seeing, obviously, losses and bad things are happening, but it is not at the point where like the system is collapsing or something like that. I think that what advocacy looks like in this moment is in some ways what it always looks like. We look to where we have access to power. And a lot of the access to power that immigrant communities have in this moment are in the states and are in local communities. And that's what a lot of the advocacy looks like. But when it comes to authoritarianism on a national level, which I think is ultimately what you're asking about, I think that what people are already doing matters and is working. I think that when you look at something like the No Kings March, I don't know if folks participated in that, there will be more mass movements to say, no, we do not accept violations of the Constitution. We do not accept autocracy. We will not accept losing our constitutional system. That matters. And what folks who have studied, you know, the rise of autocracy much more than I have said is that once enough of the population makes clear we will not accept this, it becomes effectively impossible to, you know, impose something like that. And so keep getting up, keep speaking out, keep pushing back. And, you know, for me personally, one of the pieces that's important is don't let it own your whole life. Don't let it live in your head all the time. Don't spend your whole life doom scrolling. You know, find your opportunities to speak out, to join protests, but then go and do the things that you enjoy. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, take care of your families, and we'll get through it.
And I think we're getting ready to wrap up. And just one more message to you all here. We need more attorneys. We need the ACLU to continue. We need more advocates. We need more people to join organizations. We need you all to run for office. So this is the time to really engage. There are so many different ways to do it. Thank you all.